Hey guys, welcome to Breaking the Story, episode 2. This is us trying to break our feature film concept called plastic. We're trying to discern what feature film we're going to be doing as our second or our sophomore project. And we have a couple ideas, and we're trying to break the second idea for you guys just to see what it's like as a writer to break something live. We have not broke this story at all. The only elements that come into this video are just the general concept and the brief story outline that I've created in my head. I have written a few pages of scenes for this film, but honestly, I didn't really feel very satisfied with everything, so I'm kind of starting at page 1, and we're going to build the script up in front of you guys. So I'll tell you guys the pitch, and then we'll kind of go from there, okay?
Let's do it.
So the pitch for Plastic is very, very simple, Joel. It's essentially, you've heard it, but this is for you guys, the audience.
So might as well look at the camera at that point.
Yeah. So the idea is very simply, there's a man, and he's sort of living a somewhat lavish lifestyle in this apocalypse. It's a completely post-apocalyptic environment, but this guy is playing football, he's a scientist, he's enjoying this campgrounds that he has where he's essentially the king of his own domain. And the concept is that everything in his life is going great, and we decide to meet his wife. We as the filmmakers present his wife to you in the very first few scenes of the film, and we realize that his wife is a mannequin. And so that's the first thing that's a little screwy, and of course there's this sort of predictable sort of comedy beats that start off the film, and it's sort of a more funny version of what's the movie with Tom Hanks? I can't remember it off the top of my head. Castaway. It's a more funny version of Castaway. But then there's a point where a mute girl actually happens upon the campgrounds, and she sort of takes over this campgrounds. She's really hungry. She's eating everything, and there's a point where she tells our main character that she's being hunted down and someone is looking for her. And he sort of blows this off and tells her to go away. But then the very next morning, we find out he gets knocked out by the person that was looking for her, and this person steals his mannequin wife. And he has to go on an adventure with this mute girl in order to get his wife back. And so it's sort of like Castaway meets like kind of like a adventure film, and it's got a lot of heart, a lot of comedy, and it's kind of at the end, I guess, somewhat of a kind of romantic comedy is kind of the vibe of the film. And I really think it's a very cool idea because it's really cheap to make. I think it's not a lot of actors. It's very minimal on the amount of like actual houses or sets we would need. It would be more expensive on the production design, but that's kind of where I've had to go from the start.
Yeah, I really like it. I think when I'm thinking of the themes of the idea, I think of today's society, how cheap sort of a partner is.
Yeah.
But how vital it is in today's society, right? I think in a post-apocalyptic world. And like even they've already touched on this in Castaway. They've already talked about it, but you can't, as a human, it's extremely hard to function without someone to talk to.
Yeah, it
really is.
Yeah,
unless you're like a sociopath who talks to yourself and like has conversations with like
just
two personalities inside yourself.
Yeah.
So obviously he's already made the transition that he's got to be by himself.
Yeah,
but making the transition back to normality. Into talking with another person and being able to share yourself with another person, not just two parts of yourself, but sharing your true self to another person is something that transition is hard to make. And in Castaway, it's like, boom. It's like, okay, he's saved, and then next thing you know, he's like standing outside in the rain, and then, honey, is that you? No, that's not what I mean. That's not what it is. We're actually we're taking that little cut between the time where he gets saved. And next thing you know, he's on his wife's, driveway.
Yeah.
There's stuff that happens there.
Yeah.
That transition is not easy to make. That's why I think this is so interesting, is that you delve into, and we have to develop that transition that this man has to go through.
And what's interesting is I like the one thing I really like about the story that kind of roped me into being like, this could be a very good idea, is the whole she's mute. I love that idea of it's like still not 100% of what he's expecting. He's finally met a girl, like a real girl to talk to. And you'd think if she could talk, maybe instantly he'd be like, okay, throws the mannequin life away. But because she can't talk, it almost in his psyche sort of feels like it's the same thing almost. Like it's like, well,
there's more of a conflict.
There's more of a conflict, and I think that it tackles a sort of an interesting sort of psychological thing where to him it seems the same, but to the audience there's a very clear difference, and he of course through the course of the story learns the difference.
Yeah,
you know, that's
that.
What is the difference between a mannequin who can't speak and a human who can't speak? And there's huge amounts of difference.
Yeah,
but I think that I don't know. I thought that would be kind of interesting. It's like imagine if you came back from Castaway and then everyone you tried to talk to couldn't speak, you'd still be like probably frustrated, you know?
Oh, of course.
So I think that was kind of part of the elements of what drew me to the story. So I guess the best way to break it, what are you thinking is the best way to, is it kind of just going through and just sort of breaking the whole story beat by beat, or how do you want to tackle that, Joel?
That's interesting. I mean, I think you just I think beat by beat is probably a good way to do it. I think the hardest thing, whenever I hear of an idea, I think I don't know why, but the first thing is the limitations, because I think every single independent filmmaker knows that as soon as you hear an idea, it's well, can I really do this? Yeah. Now, there's certain feature filmmakers that are up and coming, that they don't have that reservation, and they're just like, man, I want to shoot a space. I want to shoot an idea where people are in space, and you know what? They go for it. Okay, there's things like there's people that have really good, extensive VFX knowledge that can really sort of make something like that sort of come to life. Maybe a green screen. Maybe it's any other effect that can make it seem like you're in space. Who knows? Who knows who you know?
Yeah.
I'm not trying to tell people not to do that stuff. But for me, it's the opposite. It's like I sort of think, okay, well, am I going to be able to do this? Am I going to have access to, I don't know, woods that look post-apocalyptic?
Yeah.
Am I going to have to get a permit for that?
Yeah.
And sort of those sort of ideas start creeping up in the back of my mind, because limitations can be really good. They can force you to make something that you can make, and they sort of force you to be creative, because you have to think about, okay, well, I want to make a movie about this specifically. How do I do it with the resources I have? Yeah. Sort of that ingenuity that you have to that muscle you have to flex as a filmmaker, I think is something that is going to serve you time and time again.
And I think plastic, for the most part, I think the most difficult concept is going to be doing his campground. But the good thing is the campground is only in the first act, and I don't even think it's the majority of the first act. It's probably the first 15 minutes.
Yeah.
The campground is the hardest, because that's actually a setup you have to repeat. But I don't think it's too hard. I mean, as long as you group those days together, I think, and if you had it on one set, if you group those days together, you could probably make it work if you did it in 3 or 4 days.
I could see that.
That was kind of my thinking on that.
And I mean, so it's post-apocalyptic, so he's got to have a whole range of things in his campsite that he's amassed from anywhere, right? There's got to be a bunch of random stuff. There's got to be a treasure trove of it. I mean, I'm guessing this guy is basically what we know as like a bum hoarder, basically, where he just sort of picks people's garbage up. But instead of that, it's everyone. He can just go throughout houses. He can just go to houses and just take whatever he wants.
Yeah, I think for the most part, for me personally, the idea sticks away from a lot of the sort of like houses, suburbs kind of. Like, whereas The Long Con, our current feature film we're working on, is super focused on being in the suburbs. I feel like this film is so focused on being like just the woods or this sort of environment, you know?
Yeah, but I mean, okay, so you go from the campsite, is the rest just in the woods? Like, it seems like that It could get very boring. That's another limitation that I see.
Yeah, I think it just depends
being
on
a little troublesome.
I think it would be just the uniqueness of the setups that you do create. And I think the only other thing would be, because we're shooting this probably near fall, winter area, I think it's also the weather dictating the uniqueness of the cinematography would be helpful as well to hopefully get some of those magic moments, sort of.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of important.
Okay, so are you saying he lives... Now, here's another thing that I need to sort of get past in order to sort of keep going on this train here. Is it miles and miles and miles? Is he stranded in a forest that he can never get away from? How close is he to civilization? I want to know that.
I think the way I was thinking is sort of... The way I've always seen it is when you're sort of in this situation that it's almost better... Because he's a scientist as a character, and that's part of his film. So all the life is I think I mentioned it a little bit in the beginning, but maybe I didn't go in deeper into it. So he's a scientist, and it's sort of a back part of his plot, and the whole thing is he's trying to grow like life, like he's trying to grow like a plant. So he's got this these seeds he's putting in at the beginning of the film.
Oh, okay. I had no.
Yeah, no. This is actually maybe something I haven't told. There's not
just the audience that's getting broken. Because I had no clue about.
So he's planting these seeds in the beginning, and the whole thing is that nothing will grow. And in the middle of the film, he keeps trying to plant it, and the ultimate reveal is the girl. She's sort of a mutant, because what ends up happening is she loses her voice because of the radioactive stuff. So she used to be able to speak. She loses it. But what it gives her is specific abilities, so she can go through the gas without being killed. So there's certain parts where you can't go in this direction because there's gas. So she has to go past here and get something in order for them to keep going on the journey. So there's certain elements where she can't speak, but she is physically more able than our main character. And it opens up certain unique scenarios where he has to trust her to do things that are sort of hard or specific to her that she can only do. And at the end of the film, we find out that she touches the
seed,
something like that.
So that's a different thing. So if I'm getting this straight,
that's a subplot. That's a subplot.
That's a subplot. Well, let me just so I'm getting it. I'm trying to be the audience person right now. I'm trying to encapsulate what they're doing. Just tell me if I'm wrong here. So the idea is that one of the major themes is, first of all, radioactive fallout. Because clearly she has had radiation, and that's why she is sort of mutated.
Yeah.
There is still active radioactive areas that they cannot enter. Yeah. Like this guy can't enter. Yeah, he knows he can't. So he has one of those things. You always got to test for it, which I actually really like that.
Yeah.
It's not, and she ends up being the metaphorical and literal sort of savior of this guy.
Yeah, like savior figure of the. Yeah, I think. Those are certain things.
I like it. No, I like that. That's obviously we're trying to start with the foundation before we sort of build up
to it. Yeah. So I want to wrap this up, guys. Thank you for coming and watching us break plastic. We're gonna try to break waste management eventually.
Yeah. And
we have a bunch of other ideas. I mean, I have 12 or 13 other script ideas that I've been cooking. So give us your feedback and like and subscribe on our videos. We're gonna do more of these. I think the goal is to put some of these episodes up on Patreon, some of these on YouTube, and we'll decide how much. I might do a full episode on YouTube one of these days just to give people a teaser of what we have on our Patreon.
Yeah.
Go subscribe there. It's $1 for the whole month. $12. It's literally the cost of a cheese pizza at any of your places of where you like to order. So for the price of a cheese pizza, we're teaching you essentially how to make a feature film and the behind the scenes of our next feature film, potentially plastic, potentially waste management, maybe even the complex if we change our mind. So
save your health. Don't eat a cheese pizza. Come and learn how to make a film.
Yeah, definitely. Peace out, guys.